Hi everyone and welcome to Talkable Tonight. I'm really excited about bringing you this episode because it's one of my absolute favourite topics, all about learning how to use keyword signing with your little one as a way to really communicate more with your baby and to start to promote language learning. It's been a real pleasure for me to kind of get this presentation ready. I've been reminiscing about doing keyword signing with both Ella and Chloe, and we're kind of well past the stage of using signs at our house, but it was a really lovely journey and something that I got to watch some videos of them doing while I was preparing this for you guys. So you'll have to indulge me a little bit. I have included a few videos of the girls and their signing journey and kind of made it a bit more personal to my experience signing as well. So I am hoping that tonight we have no issues with sound, as not like last month where there were some issues, but just wanted to also let you know that all of these presentations go up on the Talkable Facebook YouTube channel, so if you do miss some of it or you can't hang through the whole presentation tonight, they will be up there for you to check out at a later stage. Okay, let's get started. All right, so we are talking all about using baby sign tonight. Speech pathologists call what people know baby sign, we call it keyword signing, and it is a strategy that we use with children who have language delay. So it's not an uncommon thing for speech pathologists to use for children who have difficulties communicating. Particularly we use it for children who have difficulty speaking or being understood when they talk, and it's an alternative form of communication for those kids. And that's, I guess, how I got to know about keyword signing when I was working with kids, and just saw really a lot of the benefits with actually language development, and it's something that I did with my two little ones and I tell everyone to do with their little ones, and so we're going to talk about that tonight. So when we talk about keyword signing, that means baby sign. I will use the word keyword signing, which is what speech pathologists typically use when we're talking about signing. So today we're going to go over development of gesture. So what does a typical child do? We all know that kids do sign using their hands, communicate using gesture. We'll talk about what the typical development of gesture is. Talk a bit more about what keyword sign actually is, and then we'll go into what the research says. And the research at the moment is pretty limited in terms of keyword signing helping children with typically developing children develop language. But what we will talk about then is what the theoretical underpinnings might be for why signing might help, and what some of the benefits are, how to get started, what signs to choose, a bit about our signing journey, and the benefits that I found using signing with Ella and Chloe. And then I'll link you into some extra resources that you can check out in your own time. Before I get too far, I do want to say that it is absolutely not necessary to sign with your children for them to learn language. We know that. So I'm not saying that this is something that is right for all parents or that all parents really want to get into. And really at this stage, the evidence that it helps children who are typically developing to learn language or learn language better than other children is not there. And that's not what this presentation is about. If you have a really rich language environment at home where you're talking all the time, you're sharing lots of experiences with your baby and child, they're going to learn language and they're going to learn it really well. Keyword signing is a really, for us, it was an interim strategy that we used to have some really lovely interactions before our kids could actually speak, or could speak in a way that we could understand them. So that's certainly why I really promote keyword signing as a way to communicate with kids before they can be understood. All right, so all kids will develop gesture, and some people use gesture more than others, and some cultures use gesture more than others to communicate. But it's something that all kids will use before they start communicating with words. So what we know is that gesture development starts at around 10 to 13 months. And that is typically before first words start. And what this is really showing us is some great insight into our kids' little brains, where in actual fact, they can be communicating and telling us things before their first words usually come. First words roughly come around 12 months, and developing words that are recognisable to other people takes longer than signs that are recognisable. So it's much more difficult for a child to imitate a spoken word than it is to approximate a sign. And we'll see that later on in the video, where you'll see Ella and Chloe at their very early attempts at signing words like finished, and saying words like dog. All right, we know from studying kids that a child's development of gesture is a pretty strong predictor of their later vocabulary and language development. So for children who aren't using gesture very much to communicate, that is a bit of a red flag for us. So babies under 12 months should be doing things like pointing and waving, and blowing kisses and things like that to communicate with us. And if they're not, then that can be a little bit of a sign that they might have some difficulty with language. It also predicts when they will transition to two-word phrases, and also the vocabulary size at kindy. So basically we know that the better a child's gesture development and the earlier, that is a good strong predictor of later language development. And like I said, if we don't have much gesture, then that might be a sign that a child has some difficulty with learning language. And we know that kids start to use gesture less and less as their vocabulary increases. So as they're able to communicate with words, naturally they will do a lot less pointing. They will just be telling you what they want. And that's certainly the same for using keyword signs. Kids just stop using them naturally as the words overtake their ability to sign. Okay, you might have heard of, probably you've heard of baby sign. You may have heard of something called Makaton. Now that used to be what keyword signing was called, but yeah, like I said, in the popular kind of literature, the way it's marketed to parents, it's called baby sign. Speech pathologists call it keyword sign. One of the key things that we need to remember when we are using sign with babies or little kids is that we always say the word as we sign. So we are only ever signing the keywords. It's not like Auslan where that has its own set of grammar and its own kind of complexities. We use only sign only the keywords. So we do use Auslan signs, but we don't sign all the little words in a sentence. So if the word was like Daddy's eating an apple, you would sign Daddy's eating an apple. Okay, you wouldn't be signing all those words. In actual fact, you might even just sign eating if that's what you're working on. If you only were working on a few signs and it was early on, you might just sign those early single signs. All right, it's really important that when you're doing baby sign with your child or keyword sign, that it's about communication and it's not about rote learning or testing your child. From my point of view, the benefit really is in the interaction, and that's where the language benefit will come. It's not about forcing your child to do something, and it's not about how many signs that they know. If you list off a whole lot of words, can they sign them? It's not about that. It's about how is it helping in your back and forth interactions with your child, and is it giving you lots more opportunities to just have a conversation with your baby. And that's what it's all about. It's really important that you use it in a natural way when you're talking with your child, and that goes back to that point, not about testing or rote learning or flashcards or watching, showing your baby a DVD of the signs. It's not about that at all. It's about getting your child engaged in what you're doing and having a little conversation with them. All right, it is important that it's always fun for you and your child. If it's not fun for either of you, then it's not worth doing. Something's not quite right, and it's time to rethink baby signing and keyword signing. The other thing is, you can easily learn it for free. So you do not need to pay for courses or any of those things. You can literally find every sign you would ever need online, and I will show you exactly how to do that at the end of the video, and it's super easy. All right, let's just have a little watch of myself and Ella signing together. Please just excuse the box of Baileys there in the background. That's our useful box. And yeah, I just want to show you this video because this is just kind of an example of what signing with your little one might look like. Right.
Bubble. Hi. Blow. Blow. This one. We need to open. Mummy, help. Help. Here we go. Hi. Ah! Bubble. More. More bubble. Hi. Open. Good talking. Open, Mummy. Help. Open. Have a snack? Who's sleeping? You saying help? Help. Do you want Mummy to get it? Yummy. Yummy. Good talking.
All right, here we are, I'm back. All right, so you can see there some key points of when I was signing with Ella. They were all of Ella. Using lots of repetition, following your child's lead, copying what they're doing, giving lots of positive feedback when they have a go at a sign. And we'll keep talking about this as we go through. Please also, I was going to say, if you have questions as we go along, feel free to type them in the comments box on this Facebook video. Otherwise, I will be around till 8:30 tonight, so you can always post a question later if you have one. It can be about keyword signing, it can be about anything to do with language development with your little one. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so we've had a little bit of a look at what keyword signing might look like. We've talked about the basic idea of how you would do it. But what is the evidence? So what is to say that actually keyword signing helps our kids learn to talk? And the big thing is we need more research, we need more evidence. So that most of the research that has been done done with not very many children. And also some of it has been done by the people who created Baby Sign, which is a bit of a conflict of interest. But that being said, there is plenty of developmental evidence to suggest that this is beneficial for language learning, and also theoretical evidence. So there are ways that we could explain why this might work, but we really need more research. Of the studies that have been done, we know that children who have developmental delays, it shows an increase in spoken language development. And this can be something parents often say, well, if my child's signing, isn't it going to stop them from talking? And it's actually not the case. Actually, the opposite. It promotes language learning. As soon as a child can speak a word clearly enough for you to understand them, they will stop using the sign, because it's much easier to talk, and you can talk a lot more quickly and you can say much more than you can sign. But in the interim, when kids are finding it hard to be understood and hard to communicate, then sometimes keyword signing is a really great way to talk. The other really big bit of research that's come out is to say that parents who actually use keyword signing with their child are more responsive to their child's non-verbal cues. So they're much more likely to be tuned into their child, looking at any attempts their child is making to communicate with them. And so that is promoting language development, because actually being a more responsive parent, talking more, communicating more, that's all going to help with verbal language development as well. So regardless of whether the signs develop, the beautiful interactions are happening, which is what's going to help language development. All right, so why might it actually help? Well, we know that language learning is what we call transactional. So a baby cannot learn language on their own. They can't learn it in front of a TV. They can't learn it playing with their toys. They need a social interaction, and they need a communication partner. So they need mum, dad, grandma, a brother, a sister, an aunt, or an uncle chatting away to them watching them, listening to them, and taking turns. So when a child uses a gesture or a sign with you, it's inviting you to take a turn and to respond to their communication. So children who sign are much more likely to have more back and forth interactions from an earlier age. And we know that's critical for language learning. The other really important kind of theoretical model that we think about when it comes to why keyword signing might be beneficial is that it's not just engaging the auditory cortex. So when you're speaking to a child, it's all about hearing. As soon as we start using keyword signs with our hands, we're also engaging engaging visual parts of the brain as well. And when it comes to kind of information processing, kids can then recruit different parts of their brain to process what's coming in and what they're doing. Words are much more fleeting than signs, so that's another thing when it comes to information processing. A hand sign and a gesture is going to be around for a lot longer than just the words if it was said. And you know what? When you use your hands, it engages your child, and that encourages joint attention, which is basically, hey, you and I, we're engaged in the same thing, which is critical to communication, because unless you have joint attention on something, you're not actually communicating. All right. So we know that the development of gestures is closely linked to spoken language development, and that's something I talked about earlier. The other way that it promotes language learning is that it's an early way for children to learn, hey, I can use a symbol to communicate something. I can use some kind of symbol to get what I have in my brain across to you and to get something that I want. Now, words are doing that. Sounds do that. Screaming, crying does that. But it's one of the early symbolic ways that children can communicate with us. I will use this gesture of dog to tell you about the dog. And that is a really strong precursor to them actually using the words. For example, a child will say woohoo to mean dog, usually before they'll say dog. Again, that's using a symbol to communicate. When we use keyword signing, we are emphasizing keywords ourselves. We're doing this by signing those words. Often we'll repeat those words over and over, and all of that's brilliant for language learning, because it tells our kids, hey, these are the important words. These are the words that carry the most meaning, and that is what keyword signing is doing. It's helping our child focus on the important parts of our communication. Repetition, that's a huge one, and you would have seen that in the video with me and Ella. You're saying the same words over and over again in a really natural way, okay? So those same words, that repetition is one of our key underpinnings for language learning. So it's not just that we're repeating the sign so a child can see the sign over and over. Every time we use that sign, we're saying the word. So they're actually hearing the key words over and over again. It's visually engaging for your child, and it's a bit like when we sing and we use our hands, we clap, we wave. Babies are super interested in that. And when they're engaged in that, what have we got? We've got joint attention. And what does that mean? It means we can start to communicate on a shared topic, or that we're engaged in the same thing, and that's really important. Okay. It also helps children what we call map language. Now, just stay with me with this one for a minute. Mapping language, it helps children understand what a word means. So as we say the word at the exact same time an experience happens, or an exact same time as they see the dog and we say dog, that's mapping. So they're visually seeing something, we're using the word, they're mapping that auditory word onto the visual representation of that word. When we sign with our kids, a lot of the signs we use are what we call iconic. So when we say drink, we're showing them drink. We're doing the action that mimics drink. Eat, we put food to our mouth. So lots of signs like that, which really help children understand that, oh, when I do this thing, it's called drink. It's drinking, when I'm putting the cup to my mouth. One of the other really important aspects of keyword signing that is super beneficial is when your child starts to learn their first words. And if they're anything like my two, every word will sound pretty much the same at the beginning. It'll be very intentional, it'll mean something different to them, but often it will all sound like da or maybe do. And that's great if you have the context and you know exactly what your child's talking about and they say da and you're like car, I've got it. But if they say da and you've thought, oh, but they mean car, when in actual fact they might mean star, or they might mean dad, and you're reinforcing the word car, but in actual fact they were trying to tell you something different, then there's a mismatch between that mapping of the word that they're saying and that you're repeating back to them and what they're actually thinking. Okay, whereas if a child says da and they do a sign that you recognize, you can reinforce that. You can say, yeah, car, we're going in the car, in daddy's car, or whatever it is, and that is then really nicely mapping back onto in their brain the word that they need to use, and like, hey, yeah, that's right, I did say car, even though it came out differently. So yeah, that's really reinforcing your child's early language skills, and it really helps you to tune in to your child's attempts to communicate. And we'll have a little bit of a look at this with Ella in one of the later videos, where because we'd been using keyword signing for so many months, probably almost 6 months at this point in the video, she knew that there were ways that she could get a message across. And she also knew that if mummy didn't understand me, I'm going to keep trying, and I'm going to try and tell her in different ways, because there are lots of different ways and I'm not going to give up. And that is just so critical to learning language and to learning that, hey, mummy understands me, I just need to keep trying. And also, I've got signs. If my signs aren't working, I've got words. If my words aren't working, what else could I do? Maybe I can use other actions and things like that. So we'll have a little look at that later in a little bit of time. All right, so how do you actually get started with using keyword signs? Let me just pause for a little minute there. I just want to double check that we don't have any questions, or that no one's telling me the audio's not working as it was last week. Just bear with me. That's come on. Signs. If my signs aren't working, I've got words. If my words aren't working, what else could I do? Maybe I can use that. Okay, let me just check up here. Like I said, if you've got any questions for me, please feel free to ask them as we go along. At the moment, I can see that no one has asked any questions, so that's good. All right. When should you start? Well, I would say start anytime. It's a bit like teaching or talking to your baby. We don't say, wait till about 3 or 4 months and then start talking. We don't say that at all, because we know that kids need to hear words over and over again to learn them themselves. And that we talk to babies before they're even born, but that keyword signing is a bit the same. We can start as soon as we're ready after our babies are born. Usually I say to parents, settle in, give yourself some time to get to know your little baby, get to know their routine, and take it, don't rush it. I think we started at around about 3 months. But, remembering that this has been my professional career for the last 15 years. And it came really naturally to me. I wasn't learning something new. But, there's no right or wrong time to start. And you start really small as well. Get everyone on board. All right. So it's not just about one of you doing it, mum or dad. It's really about creating an environment where lots of people sign in your life. And that might, your family members may only ever learn 4 keyword signs, or maybe at the most 10. But how amazing that if we choose those right 4 signs, that will just allow your child to communicate in so many ways with so many different people. And they'll be seeing those signs so much more often, because it's not just relying on you modeling them. Everyone's going to be using them in their environment. So try and get everyone on board. And you know what? Get them to watch this video, get them to email me, get them to send me a message on Facebook if they want to know how to get started. And I've got more videos on the Talkable website specifically about signing, which I can share in the comments to this video. I'll put in another post. So there's plenty of resources and plenty of help out there I will help you personally if you want help with this. All right, the other thing to do is just to use lots of natural gestures. And I would say to any parents, if you think you want to do keyword signing, but you feel like, oh my gosh, it's too much at the moment, then start with natural gestures. Start with waving, start with pointing, start with peekaboo, blowing kisses, clapping, all those things. Say the word as you're doing it. So, be, hi, baby, hi. You might be saying, oh, look at the dog, look, pointing as you talk. Yes and no. So lots of animation and moving your head. They're all keyword signs, to be honest. It's not, that already there. You've got quite a few keyword signs that you would be naturally doing and that your kids will naturally learn anyway. But I would say use those a lot, and they can be a good way to get people into helping as well. And then you might just choose 4 signs and add more over time. Okay, and that the important thing about not choosing too many signs is that you're not too overwhelmed yourself. You're not thinking, oh my gosh, what was that sign for pineapple? Because you never use the word pineapple. So it's not about that. It's about going, okay, 4, I'm sleep deprived, I've got a new baby, I'm going to set 2. Okay, 2. I'm going to learn 2 signs and I'm going to use those. And once I start using them and I feel comfortable with them, then they will come naturally. I won't have to think about it. And then maybe I'll learn another 2 signs. And once I've been using those 2 signs, I'll know which other signs I want to introduce into our life and into our routine. And use them in a really natural way. So I cannot emphasize this enough. There is some evidence to suggest that if parents are so focused on the signing and get a bit anxious about that it's interrupting that natural flow of communication or the natural way that they interact with their child, then that's not a good thing. So it's about really getting that lovely communication happening and adding the signs in to just what you're already doing. Okay, so making it really feel really natural, and it should feel really natural. So how do we choose signs? Well, it's important that you have really a good think about this, because this is going to be different for every family. For example, both of my girls' first sign was dog. Now, if you don't have a dog, your child may never learn the sign for dog, and that's completely fine. So it's about going, well, what do we have in our environment? What are the important things in our life? What are the interesting things in my child's life? And those are the signs we want to focus on. Ones that we use all the time, so high use, and ones that we can use in lots of different settings. So, for example, a word like eat, for example, eat. We use that at dinner time, and that is one that we would use quite a bit of. But words like more and finished, we can use wherever we are, whatever we're doing, to mean more food. It could mean more food, more swinging, finished outside, finished in the bath. So using words that can be used across multiple settings is really good. Action words are particularly good because we know that action words, children's use of action words it helps promote language learning. They have to be really meaningful. So again, this is about making it relevant to your situation and your life. Really good if they give your child choice and control. So this can also kind of go hand in hand with one of the benefits of less frustration for your child is if even just telling your child finished. If your child can tell you, hey, I'm finished, how amazing. If they can tell you, I'm finished, I'm all done, I don't want another spoonful of pumpkin, I don't want another turn at this game, I don't want to be here doing this thing, then that is such a wonderful thing that your child can communicate with you. And I tell you what, the word finished is very tricky, and your child will not be saying that word clearly for a long time to come. So it's not going to be one of their first words, but if they can easily communicate with you, I'm all done with something, then that would, honestly, that will change your life, and it will change your child's life too. We want them to be engaging, and that's why I think both of my girls learnt dog, because Oscar is the most exciting thing in our house and they were drawn to him naturally. So naturally that was a sign that we worked on so that we could we could talk about the dog, really. Followed their interests. Okay, all that being said, these would be kind of my top 10 signs that if you're going to choose to start, and you know what, you might start with 4 and then add and then add and then add, and you might only ever get up to 10 signs. And to be honest, I probably didn't have that many more than about 15 signs that I used all up, because by the time we had kind of learnt those signs and we're using those signs, and we used signs across a lot of situations, my children had learnt to use words that I understood. And so we didn't need those signs as much anymore. This is really only a very short-term, I guess, strategy, language strategy that you use. So initially, probably from about 3 to 6 months, we were modelling, through to about 6 to 9 months, a little bit of imitation, but still mostly modelling. And then from about 9 months, our little ones started to use the signs themselves. And then by the time they were about 18 months, they were not using these signs anymore. So it happens really rapidly. They learn them quickly, and then they learn words, and then they don't need them. Now, the flip side of that is if your child does have a language delay, you've got a way to communicate with your child that they wouldn't have otherwise had. And what we don't know usually, when you have a 3-month-old baby, you don't know if they're going to have difficulties learning language. And we know that about 15% of kids do find learning language tricky. So this strategy, I guess, is a really early intervention strategy where you could get in and be helping your child in that way. And they will stop using these signs when they no longer need them. So those signs on top of the stuff you're already going to be doing. So you're already going to be doing these kind of keyword signs with them. You're going to be reaching, pointing, high fives, kisses. You're going to be doing all those things. And in actual fact, you might make up your own signs without really even knowing that you're doing it. I'm just really conscious that I'm using my hands a lot because I am excited, and I just feel like I should be when I'm doing this presentation. All right, let's jump into what my signing journey looked like. And I say our signing journey because it really was a whole family thing, and Dan was into it, and he really got on board with the signing as well. And all that really helped with our kids learning signs. We started early, like I said, so we started when our kids were probably about 3 months old. And to be honest, probably with Chloe from the day she was born, because Ella was there and she was 2, and it was actually just a really nice way for Ella to kind of communicate with Chloe, even before Chloe could even focus probably on what Ella was doing. She was signing some of those things, like milk and more and finished. The signs that we chose initially were really based on our routines. And so we had to kind of work out that routine first and what fitted. And then our signs were milk, which is like this, milking a cow, which is lovely, isn't it? And you use that for any kind of milk. More, which is like this, finished, and sleep. And really, it was repeating those over and over again. And so Ella, her first sign was dog at about 9.5 months, and then pretty much the next month she was signing book and finished. So I would say really at about 9.5 to 10 months they were signing. They were communicating. They were using those as first words. Now our expectation is children kind of get their first words at around 12 months. And what this shows us is that, hey, they have the cognitive ability to be communicating, but they just don't have the, the fine muscle control that they need to speak, nor the practice they've had to speak clearly, but the intention is there. So, hey, that's a whole 3 months earlier than developmentally we would think first words came. It's all happening up there. And the more we can tap into that and encourage that at a time when our baby's brain is literally growing at a massively quick pace, then that's going to benefit their development. Chloe, she was same. Guess what? Dog, first sign. Not mum, no, not dad, but dog. And milk and banana were her next ones. So you can see Chloe's a little bit more focused on her food and a bit more motivated by her food. Ella, maybe the books, obviously very exciting for her. And here are, I guess I'm going to show you some videos now. I'm going to get rid of myself off the screen. so that you've got more space to see. And what I want to show you is a few different videos here. You'll get to see my wonderfully messy house, which is just the reality of our house, and having little kids. And hopefully it's just the reality of your house, because kids are messy, and especially when they're having fun, they're messy. I want to show you the first video here. Let me just bring it up.
You're shaking it. Can you wave? Bye. Say bye. Bye. Good waving. Bye.
I just pause it there, but basically what I wanted to show you here is that this was very early, me modelling waving really early on with Chloe. She, in that video, you can see she started to just shake her little chewy thing there. She was shaking that, and then I got her attention by waving, and then we started talking about waving and whether she could wave, and then she started imitating me.
Yeah.
So there she is, just waving away, and then back to her meal. So initially, your child will just imitate you. They won't be doing it spontaneously. They will be watching you. They'll be engaged in what you're doing, but they're listening to you say a word and do a gesture at the same time. And that's basically the basis of it. So that was Chloe early on. And then this is her at 10 months here.
See, Chloe?
She's signing dog.
Who is it? Dog. That's right. Dog.
Now, the brilliant thing about this is we get to have a whole conversation about the dog outside, because you know what? She keeps telling me, I want to talk about it.
Ska.
I want to tell you about this dog, and I'm going to keep telling you about dog. And the sign for dog, sorry, I should say, is to tap your leg twice. That's another really important thing. Your child's signs will be will be close approximations or broad approximations of your own. There'll be broad approximations of the way you sign it. And it's totally fine if they never get it perfectly the way you do it, because that's not the point. The point is, hey, I've communicated a message with you. There's dog. I've seen him. He's outside. The dog says woof woof. Let's have a chat about the dog. I really want to know about the dog. I'm motivated. I'm listening. You can map that language into my little brain. And so that's what this is about. Finished is a really good one, where I don't think any of my kids ever did finished, and finished is like this. It's quite hard for kids to make this hand shape and then gesture that way, but pretty quickly they figured out a way to do it that got the message across. All right, let me just show you Ella, and this is her signing. Oops.
Have we finished with the book?
Book.
Finished. Bye-bye, book. The book is finished. The book's finished. Book. Finished. All right.
And at the end there, she signs book. So yeah, I think that just kind of, I just wanted to show you that last video there to show you how I would have used signing when I was reading a book with her. And it was like book and finished. And I modeled that word book quite a few times. And then what did she do at the end? She said book. She signed book. All right. So just like learning to talk, learning to use signs takes lots of modeling, takes lots of repetition across lots of different settings, and time for kids to learn. So it's a long project. It's not something you're going to start one week and the next week your child's copying you. And we know this, if babies need to have a certain amount of motor control to be able to copy signs as well. But they need to have heard that and seen that sign and heard that word many, 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 many months before they will start to use it themselves. So that's really the, rationale for starting signing early. For us, I really think that the most they were using signs was around about 12 months. They'd had all this input and they were like, their language was just exploding rapidly at about 12 months, but the words they were saying were not always clear. And I'll show you in one of the videos coming up. They definitely used it to clarify messages. And as their language started to take off, the number of the signs really decreased. So once they knew, hey, I can communicate this word to you using my speech, which is actually quicker and less effort now than signing, then they use signing. Then they use the word, sorry, and they stop signing. But they would go back to signing if something, if they couldn't get their message across. All right, so I thought I'd just show you kind of, this is a little bit of a time frame, or I guess the development of a sign, and this was finished and probably one of, I must say, the most valuable sign that we ever use with our girls. And it goes from kind of Ella more imitating me to then using it using it herself a bit more spontaneously, and then at the end to use it to really clearly communicate to me that she was finished on the swing. And in that last video, I didn't model that to her or anything. I just asked her the question, hey, you finished? And she signed back to me.
Finished.
All right.
Finished. Yay! All done.
So that one's really
Finished.
just, I was signing it,
That's
she
our
was copying
new sign,
me,
Annie
I was
Cherie.
giving lots of praise.
If you see a crocodile, don't forget to scream. Ah! Clever girl. Have you finished? Oh, do you want to hop
So really
down?
clearly understanding what finish means in that instance,
Should we
at
go
by 11
down?
months.
Good girl.
And then, a little bit
finished?
after her first birthday on the swing.
All right, stop.
And I think she'd actually said to me on that last video on the swing, I think she'd actually said done or down or something, and I hadn't heard her. And then when I said finish, she was like, yeah, I'm finished. I've been trying to tell you that. But how great that she had a way to communicate that to me, and that she persevered because she knew communication works with mum and dad. They get me. We've got a way that works. Words are just one way. We can use gestures to communicate as well. Okay, so I don't know if I've sold you on Baby Sign yet, but even if I just sell you on using more gestures with your child and talking more, then I think that we're winning. But for me, these were some of the things that were massive benefits. Really rewarding early interactions. And I think sometimes early on when you feel like, oh, my baby's not really saying much to me, or I don't, what should I be doing? It gives you a way to, another way to communicate with your child in a way that often gets their attention really quickly, because they're interested in movement, they're interested in what you're doing with your face and your hands, and that was really, really rewarding. And just when they start using signs, it is so rewarding, and they use them earlier than they're using first spoken words. So much more imitation of gesture. The signs are much more easy for kids to learn than words, and I really think that made a huge difference for our girls, where they were already so used to imitating what our hands were doing, that then when it came to having a go at spoken words and imitating words, they almost did it automatically because they'd learnt the sign, they'd learnt that we always said the word as we signed, and it was a natural progression for them to imitate the words. So much more eye contact. Our kids, they use more gestures, use more sounds, and eventually they use more words because they had already learnt to communicate, and they had already learnt that communication works. They'd learnt from a very early age that I can get my message across. It's so rewarding. And you develop your relationship with your child really a lot through communicating with them, and that bond and attachment and all those things. So yes, I would say for us that was a huge benefit. Less frustration. Now, don't get me wrong, we can have epic tantrums, and I can have, which Chloe, who's 2 now, can communicate with words very well. She'll still have her meltdowns and communicate. And sometimes you ask her to tell you what's wrong, and she'll say no, she doesn't want to tell you what's wrong. She just wants to have the tantrum. It's not going to get rid of those things, but it is going to get rid of some of those frustrations where your child is telling you something very specifically, telling you that they're done. They can communicate that without having to show you in other ways, and usually what do? They might say it's food time, they'll push the bowl away if they don't want any more. They might turn away, they might get upset, they might, you know, do any of those things to tell you that I'm done, spit the food out. If they can tell you that they're finished using their hands, then they won't need to use those other behaviours to communicate that. All right. They make repairs to communication breakdown. Chloe, I'll show you this video here. This is an instance where, you know, she was probably about 14 months at this stage and using lots and lots and lots of words, but still lots of words sounded the same. And even when we were sharing a book, we had the same joint context, I still misunderstood her. But because she knew that she could communicate and she'd learnt lots of different ways to communicate with me, she kept going until I got it. And then we actually then had another turn. You know, she got to direct the way the conversation went. I mean, she's only 13, 14 months in this video, but it was the signing that kind of got her to this place. So let me just show you that.
Sing. Are they singing? Wing. That's a bird.
So she's pointing to a bird in the book, and I think she's saying sing. She's not saying sing. And then I think, well, maybe she's saying wing because birds have wings, but she's not saying that either. That's
Upside down. Sing. Swing. He's swinging.
And what does she do? She stops and she thinks for a bit, and then she goes, I know, I'm going to show you, Mummy. And, you know, I had never taught her the word swing probably. As a sign, maybe I had, but I can't remember. But she just uses her whole body movement to tell me what I'm telling you is swing it. Look, that bird looks like a swing, or that bird is swinging.
Is that what you were telling me? Good talking. Good showing, Mummy, with your body. Swing. Swing low.
And then she
Sweet
says, well, Mummy, I want you to
child.
swing low. And so she gets to
Turn the
choose
page.
that next bit of communication because of that. Another video that I was when I was looking through some of my videos yesterday, this one's of Ella as well. And this is a really good example of Ella using a sign and a word at the same time. If she had used the word on its own, I wouldn't have understood what she'd meant. And probably what would have happened is I may have guessed, given the context, but if I could have said any multitude of other words that may not have been the word she was thinking of. She wouldn't have got the word reinforce. That mapping there would have been a mismatch between what she was thinking and what I was saying back to her. So the mapping wouldn't have been great. So not a great language learning opportunity. But because she could sign, as she said the word, as she said the word for her, I was able to really reinforce that for her as well.
Yum, yum. Phone. Yeah, Mummy's using the phone. Yum, yum. Phone. Yeah, Mummy's using the phone.
So you can see there that just gave us an opportunity to have a conversation, and she again started that conversation with me that we otherwise wouldn't have had at such an early age. And I think all these things are benefiting language development in a big way. Okay, much more turn taking. I think signing did lead to that for us. Like I said, they were able to interpret what Chloe was saying. All right, so what resources are there? I did say, hey, there's all these free resources. You can do it for free. What did I mean? Let me show you. So to get started, there are a few different ways you can do it. But what I really wanted to show everyone was this amazing resource called the Auslan Sign Bank. And it's for people who are deaf and, you know, Auslan is their first language. And I'll show you now. It is a free resource online where you can type in a keyword up here and search for it and find how you would sign that, okay? With Auslan, there are different versions of different signs in different states, and so that is important to know as well. But in the end, it doesn't really matter what sign you're using, as long as you're using you're consistent with the sign that you use with your child. So for example, there are 4 different ways that you can sign dog, and you can choose the state that you're in to choose probably the most common use of way to sign that word. So this is the one that we use, for example, for dog. And so this is a really brilliant way of if you forget how you sign a word and you want to see someone actually doing it, then the Auslan Sign Bank is a great way to do that. Type in any word up the top there and type search. So that is the Sign Bank. There's another resource called Sign Planet, and that just had kind of like some printable like images of how you might sign each of the words. So if you wanted to kind of print a few out and have them up so that you were using them more often, you can go to that website. Signing Hands is another resource, and there's this Signing Stars kind of you can buy these posters, which can be really good. Uses Australian Sign Language, and it's really about some common words for toddlers and kids to use. This Baby Sign DVD or Sign Baby, I had this when before I had the girls, and that's just a nice little DVD. It's presented by one of the presenters on Play School who is deaf, and she goes through singing and how you might use signs when you're singing, and signing is all keyword signing. So that's another good one. And the other really good way to learn signs, and if you want someone modelling them to you, is through the Talkable app. So through the Talkable app, I cover 4 signs each week over 10 weeks. So actually there are 40 signs in there, which is probably more than you would ever need to use and more than I kind of ever used, but it gives you the chance of learning a whole variety of signs and picking and choosing the ones that you think fit best for your child. And you can go back to those signs. You can search through the signs, and so you can just watch the signs whenever you want to learn or revisit a sign. So I really recommend, if you're keen to do baby sign or keyword signing with your little one, check out the Talkable app. That is just a very small part of the app. The rest is all about how to create really rich language learning for your child, but that's a bonus. So there are 40 signs on there. And that's just what I spoke about, the Talkable app. So I am going to throw it out over to you now to see if you have any questions for me about baby sign. Maybe for some of you who've used signing with your little ones, you want to share your love of signing, or some great stories about signs your child used, or perhaps some communication opportunities you had because your child was signing. And yeah, I'll be online for the next 5 minutes or so. You'll always seem to run out of time. I thought that would be a really quick presentation, but it turns out I'm good at talking. So I've got a few questions that have been emailed through. I might go through those, and then also as I'm reading these, if you've got questions, anything to do with language development, please type them into the Facebook comment below page, and I can answer them now. All right, so okay, there was a question that had come in previously about when should I start, and I think we covered off on that in the presentation. Start whenever you like, but start early. Start before your child is talking or gesturing. So we want to start probably around 3, 4, 5 months, knowing that kids will start imitating, gestures start developing at around 9 months. Oh, this is a good one. How do I get my partner to sign with me? Yeah, that is a really tricky one. And I think sometimes, one person might be really keen to do the signing and the baby signing, but the other person who's not quite as sure about it and feels a bit awkward and a bit self-conscious. I would say get them to help them understand what signing is and why you might do it. So get them to watch this video, or I'll share some of the videos on the Talkable page. get them to watch those, get them to just use like lots of gesture and say, you know, naturally waving and talking while they're doing it. And then you can reinforce, hey, you're already doing it. You're doing lots of signing through your natural gesture. And then you might like get them to just, you know, use a couple of signs. But I think it is really good that the more people you can get on board, the better. And I think, yeah, just letting them have a go. The more you sign, when kids start to sign, that's really reinforcing for parents. So often it's a good, you know, everyone will start to do it then as well. Won't signing stop my baby from talking or my child from learning to talk? And that is a really common myth. I think lots of parents say to me, well, I don't want to be using signs. And this is particularly for children who have language delay. I see parents come in and they say to me, oh, well, they're not talking much, but we want to focus on the talking. We don't want to focus on the signing. But what the research shows us is that the more we sign and the more we develop those signs for them, it actually encourages spoken language development as well. There is no detrimental effects to signing because we're always saying the word when we're signing. And if anything, it promotes language learning. So I think that's important, really important to know. All right, I'm just going to flick over to see if there were any other questions from you guys tonight. Just a lovely share from a friend about Ella and her little scream for Row Boat. Yes, she was such a lover of that one. Thanks, Lise. And I'd had one other question come in during the week about someone who has a 2-year-old. They said they've started to talk, but they're pretty hard to understand. Should I go and see someone about this? Really tricky. 2-year-old, you know, we're expecting lots of language development at 2. We're expecting lots of language development too, but we know that 2-year-olds are typically not always clear. So I think it's a really good kind of rough guideline to go by if you should be able to understand your 2-year-old most of the time. So if you are finding them hard to understand as a main person that spends all their time with them, they should be using kind of more than one word in a sentence. They should be starting to put short sentences together at 2, and you should understand most of what they say. And a stranger should understand about half of what they say. So, you know, if they're at the shopping centre and the lady at the checkout says something, you know, your child says something to them, they should understand about half of what your child said. And I think they're kind of good benchmarks to go by. If you yourself are struggling to understand your 2-year-old, then it is worth getting a second opinion and getting someone to assess their speech and language development. So I think good call to be kind of noticing it and just reflect on how much you're actually understanding. All right, I want to say thank you for listening to me tonight, talking all about keyword signing, which is one of my favourite topics to talk about with language development. I will see you next time for Talkable Tonight, and this one will go up on the Talkable YouTube channel really soon. All right, bye for now.